The deadliest drugs you've never heard of. At this point, it's undeniable that you guys are some fiends. Fiends for weird drug videos. And I guess now I'm your supplier. The first video I made about crazy drugs has over 2 million views. And the second video I made about crazy drugs hit 500,000 views in one day. In that second drugs video, I even said that if we hit 50,000 likes, I'll make a part 3, which you guys hit in literally 3 days. So now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the third installment of crazy drugs you've never heard of. And in case this is the first drugs video you're seeing, don't worry. The other 2 videos are amazing, but they are separate videos and don't need to be watched to enjoy this one. Now, let's get crazy. Number 1. 2C. This drug is one of the only drugs I've covered with its name being one of the risk factors. This drug goes by many nicknames. 2CB, pink coke, but there's no one word for it, and that's kind of fitting considering there's no one recipe for it either. Now, if 2CB sounds anything similar to 2CB, you'd be correct, but these 2 drugs are nothing alike. 2CB is a psychedelic we may or may not touch on later, but 2C or 2CB is not a psychedelic whatsoever. It is typically a concoction of various stimulants, opioids, amphetamines, and other things that should never be mixed together, especially with alcohol, which was unfortunately common, which we'll get into. But don't worry, it's typically dyed pink, so it's gotta be fine, right? No. If you watched my last video about rich people with strange hobbies, you would have heard me discuss Sean Diddy Combs and his extremely deplorable actions. And if you've been following that story closely, then you may have actually heard of this drug I'm currently talking about. Why? Well, because 2C or pink coke is something that Sean Combs was reported to have used to lace the alcohol provided at his Diddy parties. Why? Because this concoction of drugs was almost always guaranteed to either render you unconscious or put you in such a vulnerable state of delirium that unfortunately you were easily taken advantage of and in most cases didn't even fully remember what happened. Focusing back in on this drug, what exactly is it and where did it come from? According to my research, 2C was created by a man named Alejo 2C in Colombia. Originally, 2C was a combination of ketamine with other drugs, typically party drugs like MDMA or methamphetamine. According to some users on a drug forum, 2C is the drug of choice of many people in South America, let alone Colombia. But as the drug gained popularity and spread further out of South America, the recipe changed rather dramatically, essentially making the drug some sort of chemistry-themed game of telephone. It seems that the brand name got popular and everybody wanted to cash in, but they didn't know the recipe, so they just kind of made it up. And that's what makes this drug extremely dangerous, on top of the obvious element of taking illegal illicit substances. Just think about it. 5 people who have taken 2C could be discussing their experiences together, but all be talking about extremely different concoctions that they took, which makes this dangerous because if you don't know what you're taking, which unless you test it is the case for this substance, the way that it affects your body is going to change significantly and could very easily cause death. One user states that he was actually offered some from his dealer and he bought it, but he was at least somewhat smart and had it tested. He said it was a pink powder that smelled like strawberries, but when it was tested, it turned out to be a mixture of caffeine, ketamine, MDMA, and a bit of meth, which he obviously didn't take. Others on this forum claimed that they've taken 2C that has had LSD mixed into it, creating a very extreme psychedelic experience that, according to them, was not pleasant. One rather ominous comment on this forum simply reads, "Hey guys, stay clear of this stuff. I'm having a massive mental breakdown. So intense. What can I do for relief? Please advise if you know anything medically." This brings me to my next point. Taking unknown chemicals is bad enough, but taking an unknown mixture of chemicals is even worse. When you mix chemicals, your body doesn't process each of the individual effects from each chemical and stack them on top of each other. Typically, one of 2 things happen. Firstly, your brain processes all of the stimuli as one input, causing a system overload which could end a number of different ways. This danger is only amplified when you take substances with very contradictory effects. For example, if you take a stimulant which increases your blood pressure and mix it with a depressant which lowers your blood pressure, you are simultaneously telling your body to speed up and slow down your heart rate at the same time, sending your brain extremely mixed signals, which can very easily lead to death. Now, secondly, on top of just having a system overload, your body can, instead of just processing everything as one input, it can actually take the inputs that you gave it and produce a new input in your body. Your body is literally a master chemist, so if you give it the wrong combination of chemicals, it will make something you likely don't want. So yeah, in case you need a recap on why 2C is so dangerous, the name itself is deceiving and confusing considering it sounds the exact same as a completely different drug. It has famously been used to take advantage of people. Its exact origin is unknown, and 9 times out of 10, you're probably gonna get a random concoction of drugs that you shouldn't be taking, individually or especially combined. I don't care if it's pink or smells like strawberries. 2C is diabolical, and yet it's one of the more tame entries on this list. Let's move on. Number 2. 2CB. Following the first segment, I almost felt compelled to add this drug as an entry. Admittedly, it's not the most crazy or obscure drug I've covered in this series, but it's still a crazy compound and has a story worth telling, especially if I was going to reference it so much in the first section. I figured you guys would be at least a bit curious about what the real 2CB was all about. 2CB is also commonly known as bromomescaline, bromo, nexus, or Venus, and is a synthetic psychedelic drug that was first synthesized in 1974 by Alex Shulgin. And it gained popularity initially for its potentially therapeutic uses, but has since been limited to primarily recreational use, which we'll get into. The reason why 2CB was dropped by the psychiatric community as an aid in therapy was due to the fact that it caused gastrointestinal effects and had a lack of empathogenic effects, which in simple terms means it failed to cause the same level of emotional openness as other drugs serving a similar therapeutic purpose. It's easy to see how an empathogenic would be beneficial for a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but if it doesn't serve that purpose and only makes them horny and gassy, I could see why it was also dropped rather quickly. Like, could you imagine seeing a psychologist and they give you this newly synthesized random chemical compound that they think might help you, but in reality you felt the same and just farted more? That would kind of suck. But unfortunately, it wasn't just that pleasant. Some psychiatrists initially would actually dose their clients with this without them knowing, as they believed that it helped their clients be more open and introspective, and I guess gassy too, but jokes aside, that's definitely not cool. It is a bit of an unfortunate mix that an aphrodisiac can give you stomach issues. Definitely something you do not want to mix. Like, all I'm saying is if Viagra had a side effect of diarrhea, it probably wouldn't be all that popular. Now, although it failed in psychiatric cases, it definitely gained popularity in the party scene as it was known as the most powerful sex-enhancing drug of all time. In fact, during the 1980s, several different companies manufactured and sold 2CB as a sexual enhancement product. Basically, one of those gas station boner pills, which is pretty crazy considering this drug is half stimulant and half hallucinogen, with some people comparing it to MDMA combined with a psychedelic. According to studies, even low doses of this drug in young chickens have shown to produce similar effects to low doses of amphetamines. So I don't know why they tested this on young chickens, but yeah, young chickens took it and acted like they were on meth, which also means that at some point they gave these chickens meth too. So I feel really bad for these chickens, and some of you fiends watching envy these chickens. So yeah, strange, but I guess the low doses where it gives you the aphrodisiac and social effects. Normal doses give you the slight psychedelic and slight amphetamine effect, and high doses are a rather strong psychedelic experience. But to be fair, this drug isn't extremely unknown, and it's also not the most insane drug I've covered. But what is crazy is a drug that is commonly mistaken for 2CB, known as bromo dragonfly. Bromo dragonfly was first synthesized in 1998 and is an extremely potent chemical compound. For example, this drug is measured in micrograms, not milligrams, micrograms, which is extremely dangerous because this compound is toxic to humans at even moderate doses, which is extremely dangerous because if you think you're taking 2CB but you are taking bromo dragonfly, if you take even a low dose of what you think is 2CB of bromo dragonfly, you will be dead. Bromo dragonfly is 20 times more potent than 2CB, and because of unfortunate mix-ups, at least 5 people have been reported to have been killed from bromo dragonfly toxicity. On top of death, people have also lost limbs due to bromo dragonfly, as in one case, a 35-year-old Swedish man had vasoconstriction in one of his legs, leading to necrosis in one of his feet, basically meaning his blood vessels narrowed to the point where blood could not effectively get to that part of the body, and part of his foot died and had to be amputated, all because of this drug. Bromo dragonfly is likely one of the more dangerous and scary aspects of 2CB, and although it's a completely separate compound, they are often mistaken for each other, as there is a variant of 2CB known as 2CB fly, which is often mistaken as bromo dragonfly, which is a deadly mistake due to, like I said, the 20 times difference in potency. Bromo dragonfly is a rather mysterious and elusive substance, and honestly, it was kind of hard to gather much more information on it than I've currently gathered here. But yeah, the real 2CB was a mix between LSD and MDMA, at least in low doses, and was even in very low doses sold as an aphrodisiac. And unfortunately, there was a very similar sounding variant that was 20 times more potent and accidentally taken in high doses, which typically led to death or, in fortunate cases, just amputation. Pretty crazy. But assuming you didn't want to lose your leg or your mind or just be horny and gassy, but you still wanted a safe buzz with known ingredients and dosage, today's sponsor, 5CBD, is perfect for you. There are a lot of different ways to use THC: smoking, dabs, the Benjamin, but all of them have shortcomings. Either they smell bad, taste bad, aren't discreet, or, worst of all, you have to keep hitting them every 45 minutes or so to keep the good vibes going. OG Kush is great, but it has hundreds of cannabinoids hitting you all at once. With 5CBD products, you can choose which specific cannabinoid effect you want. For example, their gummies have 50 milligrams of CBD, 10 milligrams of THC, and a special cannabinoid that changes based on what you're looking for. Their Surge gummies are perfect if you want energy, thanks to the sativa. Their Vibes gummy has CBG to keep you awake but relaxed. And their Chill gummies have CBN, which is more of an indica to keep you relaxed and help you sleep. Additionally, you'll never have to inhale any smoke. And unlike the Benjamin, 5 CBD products last upwards of 3 hours, which makes it perfect for a Friday night or Sunday afternoon. And if you live in a strict state, don't worry, because even the wildest 5 CBD products are shippable to all 50 states nationwide. So if you want to chill legally in your state, use my link in the description to get gummies for free. Just cover shipping. And yes, customers must be 21 and over to purchase. Use my link in the description to get your first gummies absolutely free when you cover shipping. Thank you so much to 5 for sponsoring this video. Number 3. Jenkem. So far in this series, we've covered drugs that will make you lose your mind for weeks, instantly kill you, make you lose all control of your body, make you join a cult, and other crazy things. But no drug that we've covered has been, in my opinion, as gross as Jenkem. For some of you, you've heard this story before, and if you haven't, I envy you. But I am about to ruin your day with exactly what it is. To put it frankly, Jenkem is a fermented mix of human waste. In simpler terms, human urine and fecal matter are the primary ingredients for this drug. It's rather rudimentary in nature and only requires you to urinate and defecate into a bottle, allow it to ferment in the sun for a few days, and after just a bit of time, your Jenkem is ready for inhaling. The drug is reported to give a hallucinogenic effect and was first reported in the mid-1990s as a street drug among Zambian youth. In this case, they would do their business in this bottle and attach a balloon on top and leave it in the sun. And as this balloon would fill up with gases, they could tell that their fermented Jenkem was almost ready. Following this, they would take the balloon and inhale their, concoction. This almost sounds like a troll because of how disgusting this would be. Like, not even the best high in the world could convince me to leave my own business in a bottle to ferment in the sun for days to then inhale it. I can only imagine how many people that have tried this drug have instantly just thrown up. I can only assume that this is one of those smells that is burnt into your nostrils forever. As far as the actual effects of this drug, it seems rather underwhelming, especially for what you have to put up with to consume it. But I guess you get what you pay for. This is one drug you can get even if you're piss poor. Get it? The main source of the hallucinogenic effect from this drug typically comes from the hypoxia that it causes, because the fermented raw sewage produces 2 primary gases, carbon monoxide and hydrogen sulfide. The carbon monoxide can cause an altered state in your brain by displacing oxygen, which, like I mentioned, can cause hypoxia, which can be euphoric but also extremely dangerous and cause potential brain damage and even death. And hydrogen sulfide in low doses can cause irritation to your eyes, nose, and throat. Moderate doses can cause headache, dizziness, nausea, and vomiting. And in high doses can cause shock, convulsions, coma, and even death. I literally can't see any reason why anybody would want to do this. These 2 extremely dangerous and relatively common gases are likely the least ideal way to get any sort of buzz, and you'd probably be better off just doing some breath work than inhaling poop air. I couldn't find much in terms of trip reports, and I'm honestly glad because I don't think I'd want to read anything from somebody who would do such a thing. And although this drug is relatively simple and not very well documented, it is still disgusting, crazy, and in my opinion, a story worth telling. And even if the story ended there, I still think it would have landed on this list simply because of the sheer gross out and shock factor. But luckily for you, that's not the whole story. One of the most interesting aspects about this drug is how one high school student was able to use it to troll almost all of America in 2007. I know this is a drug video and not a hoax video, so I'll make this part brief, but it is kind of interesting and honestly hilarious. Long story short, a high school student heard about the African use of Jenkem and thought it was just disgusting, which honestly, fair. But he took it a step further and actually made his own fake Jenkem and planted pictures of it and people using it online in an attempt to cause a hoax. Little did he know that this would get picked up by the police, and because of this, an internal memo was made and leaked, which eventually made it to the news. Once this news broke, it became a widespread panic amongst parents that their child could be getting high off of their own sewage, which is hilarious and idiotic and just insane. There's a really hilarious news segment all about Jenkem back from 2007 when this hoax was going on. And one of my favorite parts is the street interviews they did with people when they were explaining the drug to them and asking them what they thought about it. Let me play that for you quickly.
I couldn't imagine doing something like that.
They need to find something better to do with their life.
Sounds pretty sick to me.
So yeah, to summarize Jenkem, it's literally pee and poo in a bottle in the sun and it's gross. On top of all of the dangerous bacteria and just disgusting odor, you also risk getting brain damage from hypoxia. And besides the original breaking news from Africa, it appears that most of the widespread information and panic around this drug is based off a hoax or a troll, which is kind of hilarious. Information itself on African use cases of this is pretty hard to find, and although I'm sure it happened in some instances, I can't imagine this is something that's extremely popular. But feel free to chime in if you know anything about this that I wasn't able to find. I think the funniest part about this entire situation is how this Florida news anchor ended this broadcast.
But parents need to be aware that kids are calling it by the more popular slang term, butt hash.
It is unfortunate and upsetting that African youth are resorting to such a disgusting means just to get a little high. And honestly, I don't blame them. But I guess the silver lining is, out of all of this, we did get butt hash. Number 4, Flocka. Our fun little poop interlude is over, and now we're back to some seriously diabolical particles, of which Flocka is definitely one of the highest rank. Flocka, also known as alpha PVP or zombie drug, is a seriously deadly synthetic stimulant. It triggers surges of both dopamine and norepinephrine in the body simultaneously. This combination can cause aggression, paranoia, anxiety, hallucinations, agitation, psychosis, and more. And physically, it can cause kidney damage or failure and heart attacks. It's not just the combination of dopamine and norepinephrine that cause this too. There's other factors involved, but those are some of the side effects of this drug that I wanted to get to right away, because this drug is insane. I don't even know if this is real, but based off some of the videos I've seen of people on this drug, I would believe it. I guess some people call this drug $5 insanity, which is looking accurate because this drug is extremely cheap, at least relatively compared to other drugs, especially due to its potency, and it literally turns you into a zombie. Hence the zombie drug name I mentioned earlier. The source of Flocka is actually naturally occurring and is commonly used in Africa as a mild stimulant. They take leaves from the cat plant and chew it, and from that they get a mild stimulant effect, which is rather common in Africa and some other places as well. However, although they are chemically similar, the Flocka that you see in the streets are nowhere near natural, and they are all synthetically produced, typically overseas in countries like China. Like some other street drugs, Flocka is known to produce superhuman strength, which is something you've probably heard about in terms like meth head strength or crackhead agility, which is extra crazy because not only are you out of your mind, but you're also a superhuman on this drug. And one of the reasons why it's so dangerous is because it's 10 times more potent than cocaine and 20 times more potent than MDPV, which is one of the primary ingredients in bath salts. Speaking of bath salts, this drug is a synthetic cathinone, which is a chemical that is chemically related to pyros. And if you watched our first video, you would know what pyros are all about. Flocka is a ketone analog of prolintane, which is exactly what inhibits the norepinephrine and dopamine uptake, causing the central nervous system stimulant effect. This drug can be taken almost any way and has been reported to be ingested by smoking, snorting, placing it under your tongue, ingesting it, or even vaping it. The overdose risk on this drug is extremely high because, as we stated previously, the potency is extremely high, but it also enters your bloodstream extremely fast, meaning that if you take too much, the only way you'll really know is by passing out and hopefully waking up at some point to realize you took too much. The entire experience on this drug lasts anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, but the side effects and come down last for days. This isn't quite a trip report, but it's one of my favorite stories relating to this drug. A man in Florida, of all places, I know, shocker, was high on Flocka walking down the street when he found a particularly attractive tree and attempted to have sex with it. Understandably, the police were called on this aggressive man, this innocent tree, and shortly enough, the police arrived. Obviously, because he was high on Flocka, he was extremely aggressive and was not responding or cooperating with the police at all. And this led the police to tase him. 2 different officers tased this man, and as he was tased, he didn't fall, he didn't even budge. He simply pulled the taser barbs out of his skin and yelled, "I am Thor." And it turns out that he actually wasn't Thor. He was just a Florida man high on Flocka. I just hope that tree is okay. As I was doing research on different experiences and people on this drug, I found 2 interesting trends. 1, there's not many trip reports, just sightings of people on this drug in public. And 2, everybody that's been spotted on this drug is typically naked. Upon further research, I found out why, and it's honestly interesting and scary. Long story short, Flocka increases your core body temperature to over 106 degrees Fahrenheit, which is much stronger than your average fever, and this temperature is also the point at which your muscles start to break down, which is another huge negative side effect on your body. So yeah, this drug makes you really hot, and when you're in such a zombie-like state, getting naked is easy to do and probably feels pretty right. I know we mentioned earlier that this drug is chemically similar to pyros, and if that's the case, then I wouldn't want to be near anybody on anything similar to pyros if they're naked and running around with absolutely no fear and with super strength. If you haven't seen the first video on crazy drugs, let's just say pyros make you really, really excited. So yeah, even though this drug is cheap and lasts up to 8 hours and makes you feel like Superman, or I guess Thor, it will literally destroy your body, likely kill you, and in the very best case, you will survive, but your life is essentially ruined. So unless you want to do the most realistic zombie cosplay, don't go anywhere near this substance. Although Flocka is ridiculous and every other drug on this list has been crazy as well, the last entry on this list is likely the most crazy, and potentially even crazier than every entry on this list combined, at least in my opinion. And before we get into that, I do need to make one very important note. Although these videos I make follow all of YouTube's guidelines, they still don't love them, and there is a very high risk that come with making videos explicitly about these sort of substances. If you want this series to continue and you appreciate this content, leave a like and let me know that you want to see part 4. I'll continue this series as long as you guys want it, no matter what YouTube thinks about it. The support on this series has been so overwhelming, and I appreciate you guys so much. Now, let's get into our last crazy chemical of this video. I say this video because with the research I've been doing, I found enough crazy unknown chemicals to make likely a 20-part series. And if this video gets maybe 50,000 likes, part 4 is definitely confirmed. Number 5. Crocodile. This drug, I would say, for anybody watching this video is probably something you've heard of, at least in passing. It's definitely lower on the never heard of scale, but on the craziness scale, it is off the charts, which is why I decided to keep it in this video. Like a few others on this list, crocodile is a synthetic opioid, which is most commonly known for its use in Russia. If you thought to yourself that crocodile kind of sounds like crocodile, well, you wouldn't be wrong. And that isn't by accident. The drug's actual name is desomorphine, but it's known as crocodile because of what it does to your body. Crocodile is most commonly injected, and when injected, it can cause clotting and damage to blood vessels. This causes the surrounding tissue of the injection area to die and rot. This causes the dead skin to turn dark green and get a scaly texture. This is obviously where the crocodile name comes from, the horribly infected injection sites of this drug. But that's just the beginning. The drug does not dissolve completely in your body, and the clumps of this chemical circulating through your bloodstream can get lodged in other areas and do extreme harm, such as causing infections in soft tissue, ulcers, and even gangrene. Without even knowing literally any other details about this drug, it is safe to say that this drug deserves a spot on this list, but we're just getting started. The fact that this drug is so destructive to your cells upon even first use is insane, but it doesn't stop there. The drug was actually first synthesized in the 1930s in the USA, and it produces an opioid-like effect with a fast onset. It is a powerful morphine derivative and is about 10 times more potent than regular morphine. And the first recorded cases of abuse of this drug appeared internationally in 2002. This helps shine a little bit more light on why people take this drug in spite of how destructive it is to your body. It is essentially an extremely potent, cheap alternative to heroin that can be made with items from the hardware store and the pharmacy. And for that reason, it gained popularity in Russia and Eastern Europe, countries that are poor and typically struggle with substance abuse. And with how easy it is and cheap it is to make, the popularity is unfortunately understandable. Although this drug has an extremely potent and euphoric morphine-like effect, due to its potency, it is extremely toxic and typically causes hallucinations, which isn't super common for other morphine analogs. As far as trip reports go, I was unsuccessful in finding any that were at least verifiable, but we have covered a lot of detailed, extremely potent opioid trip reports in this series so far, which if this is the first video you're seeing, there is 2 others which you can watch after this. Without getting too deep into chemistry mumbo jumbo, there's not a lot more to talk about when it comes to crocodile. And honestly, the most interesting part about it is how destructive it is to your body and how scarily accurate the name is. This drug is disgusting, destructive, and it's extremely unfortunate that people are resorting to using this. There are videos online of people taking this drug, and it is extremely scary to see. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our 3rd episode of the Craziest Drugs series. Once again, I appreciate the support on this series, and I will keep it going as long as you guys want to see it. For a bit of a teaser for what part 4 could contain, I do have a list of extremely obscure research chemicals that I even had to verify if they existed because they were so ridiculous. So in case this video was a bit too mainstream for your liking, part 4 is definitely going to be for you. So make sure you drop a like. If you like this video, make sure you check out the other videos in this series. They're on screen now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, trust me, bro.